When my daughter-in-law told me I wasn't needed anymore, I didn't cry. I just stood there, holding a cup of tea that had already gone cold in my hands. Her voice was calm, almost polite. Amy, you've done so much for us. Maybe it's time you take some rest now. Maybe stay with your sister for a while. She said it with a smile, the kind that hides its real meaning behind gentleness. And my son just stood beside her, his head slightly bowed, eyes fixed on the floor. That silence hurt more than any word she could have said. In that moment, something inside me grew very still. I could hear the ticking of the clock on the wall, the faint whistle of the pressure cooker in the kitchen, and the sound of my own heart quietly breaking. I had lived in that house for more than 30 years. Every corner of it carried pieces of my life. The faded handprints on the wall from when my son was little, the old sewing machine in the corner that had fed us for years, and the photo of my late husband on the shelf, smiling as if to remind me that love once filled this home. But that day, I realized love can change form. It can grow quiet, uncertain, and sometimes uninvited. I didn't argue. I didn't ask why. I simply nodded and said softly, "All right, Beta. If that's what you both think is best." Her face relaxed, maybe in relief, maybe in victory, I couldn't tell. And my son, he still didn't look up. That night, as I folded my shawl and placed it in a small suitcase, my hands trembled. Not because I was scared, but because I knew I was leaving behind more than just a house. I was leaving behind a lifetime. Before I left, I looked around the room one last time. The bed I had slept on since my wedding, the curtains I'd stitched myself, the soft hum of the ceiling fan that had sung me to sleep for decades. And then, I whispered to the empty air, maybe they'll understand one day what it means to be a mother who is no longer needed. I still remember the day my son was born. The rain had been falling all morning, soft and steady against the tin roof of our small home. I was only 23, scared and hopeful all at once. When the nurse placed that tiny bundle in my arms, my heart forgot every pain it had ever known. I named him Adil, because the word meant justice, and I wanted him to grow up kind and fair, like his father. My husband, Rashid, was a quiet man. He didn't speak much, but when he did, his words always carried warmth. We didn't have much money back then, but our house was full of laughter, prayers, and the smell of my homemade parathas every morning. We didn't chase luxury, we built peace instead. Adil grew up wrapped in love. He was the kind of boy who couldn't sleep without saying, "Good night, Amy," at least twice. Every morning before school, he'd come running into the kitchen, his hair messy, asking, "Amy, do you think Baba will let me ride his bicycle today?" And I'd laugh, wiping my hands on my apron. "Only if you promise not to fall again, my brave one." Those were the golden days, simple, steady, full of rhythm and routine. Even after Rashid passed away when Adil was only 15, we managed. It wasn't easy, but we leaned on each other. He used to say, "Amy, don't worry. One day I'll make you proud." And he did. He studied hard, worked even harder, and eventually became a young engineer, the first in our family to wear a suit to work. When he got his first salary, he brought me a silk shawl and a small gold bangle. He said, "You deserve this, Amy. You've given me everything." I still keep that shawl, the same one I was folding the night I left his home. When he told me he wanted to get married, I was truly happy. I prayed that he'd find someone kind, someone who would love him like I did, or at least try. And when I met Sadia, his fiancée, I remember thinking, she seems like a good girl. She was polite, soft-spoken, and well-educated. The first time she came over, she wore a pale blue dress and brought a box of sweets. She called me Amy from the very beginning, and I felt my heart open to her. The wedding was beautiful, small but full of love. I watched them sit together under the floral arch, his hand resting gently on hers, and I thought to myself, maybe this is what every mother dreams of, to see her child settled and smiling. After the wedding, they decided we would all live together. Adil said, "Amy, this house is yours. You've made it a home. We're not going anywhere." For a while, it was everything I could have asked for. Mornings began with the sound of the kettle whistling, Sadia's laughter echoing from the kitchen, and Adil reading the newspaper before work. We'd have breakfast together, parathas, omelette, and steaming cups of chai. Sadia often helped me in the kitchen. Amy, let me do that, she'd say, taking the rolling pin from my hands. I would smile and reply, Beta, I've been making parathas since before you were born. But thank you. We would laugh. It felt warm. It felt right. But like every home, change comes quietly, not as thunder, but as soft rain that seeps in unnoticed. It started with little things. She began spending more time in her room. Adil started coming home later, saying work was getting busier. The table that once held 3 plates began to hold only 1 most nights. Still, I didn't complain. Mothers don't complain. We wait, we hope, we understand even when we're not asked to. Sometimes, I'd sit in the living room with the TV humming softly in the background and wait to hear their laughter from the other room. But all I could hear were muffled conversations, and then silence. Once, when I knocked on their door to ask if they'd eaten, Sadia opened it halfway. She said, "Oh, we already ordered food, Amy. You don't need to worry about dinner." Her tone was polite, but distant. It was in those small moments I began to feel like a guest in my own home. Adil would assure me now and then, "Amy, she just needs time. She's adjusting." And I believed him, because I wanted to, because that's what mothers do. I filled my days with little chores, watering the plants, sewing old clothes, calling my sister now and then. But deep inside, I missed the sound of his voice calling out for me, the laughter over dinner, the small arguments that made us feel like family. I told myself it was just a phase, that once they had children, once the house filled with new laughter again, everything would return to the way it used to be. I didn't realize that sometimes love doesn't return, it just learns to stay quiet.